you don't know, better get your book out. Okay, here we go. I have found his grace is all complete. He supplieth every need. While I sit and learn at Jesus' feet, I am free, yes, free indeed. It is joy unspeakable and full of glory, full of glory, full of glory. It is joy unspeakable and full of glory. All the half has never yet been told. Last verse. I have found the joy no tongue can tell, how its waves of glory roll. It is like a great o'erflowing well springing up within my soul. It is joy unspeakable and full of glory, full of glory, full of glory. It's joy unspeakable and full of glory. All that has never yet been told. Thank you very much, Bessie. Let's go a little in prayer. Does anybody have a spoken prayer request? Okay. I think I think everybody leaves the hospital has COVID. Yeah. When they leave. Yeah. I think that's what I've heard for the last 6 months. Okay. Anybody else? I have a request, a lady that I work with, that she has to be prayed for her daughter, 15-year-old daughter. They had to have press charges against the daughter for behavior, and it's really bad. Okay, for destructive behavior, put it that way. And so pray for this family that is struggling and doesn't know how to they can't fix anybody, how to fix the situation, how to help their daughter. They just don't know what to do. Okay, pray for that situation. Okay, just 15-year-old girl. That's normal behavior. No, I'm just kidding. I thought, yeah, see your life either. Okay, okay. Anybody else? But the politician's going there tomorrow, so it'll all be fixed. Never mind. Bad comment. We're church was not supposed to be sarcastic. Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, let's go for it. Charlie, lead some prayer. We got a wrestling match upstairs. We don't know about WWF or what it's called. Whatever it is. Sounds like it. Yeah, I like it. I love hearing kids go bouncing each other off the walls upstairs, whatever's going on. Okay. The last couple weeks well, I always go over the kids' lesson before we get to our lesson, and see how they all tie together. But the last couple weeks in back to back, we'll talk about Abraham and Isaac and Sarah. Okay, I want to review. I want to tell you the kids' lesson back there. So when your kids have questions after church, you go over it with. Okay. So Abraham's wife is named Sarah, and the son is named Isaac. Okay. Last week we went through the story of Abraham taking Isaac up on the mountain and offering him up as a sacrifice. Only he didn't actually have to come, but he firmly believed that God said all these promises are going to come through Isaac. All the children are going to come through Isaac, and so Abraham firmly believed. Hebrews 11 tells us he believed that he took Isaac up on and sacrificed him to God. That God was going to allow him to come back to life and come back down off the mountain. It was just a test, right? We went through this story last week. Now, the next chapter or so tells us that Sarah passed away, and Abraham, he looks at the girls that are around him, and it has nothing with how they look or anything else. He just doesn't want Isaac to marry anyone from there, okay? And he calls his eldest servant in. I think the guy's name is Eliezer. And he said, I don't want Isaac to marry these girls. I want you to go back to our country. You know, he knew where he's from. Go back to our country and find a bride for Isaac. And the servant said, what if she doesn't come? He said, you'll be relieved of your duties. If you go there and you ask this girl to marry Isaac, and she doesn't come, then you don't have to worry about it. It's not your responsibility to get the response. It's just your responsibility to go and make the offer. Okay? So he loads up 10 camels with all the food and provisions that they need, gold, silver, jewelry, all this fancy stuff that he has. Abraham is at this time one of the richest men in all of Arabia, we'll put it that way. Okay, all the Middle East. He is one of the richest men around. He has 316 men that work for him. They're shepherds and they're herdsmen, and they're also trained soldiers. We went through those stories. So this man makes this trip several hundred miles on his camel, and so when he gets to where he's supposed to be going, there's a well of water there. Most of us know the story, right? You know the story. Everybody knows the story. So there's a well of water. He prays, Lord, if you bless my master Abraham, your servant, he said, whatever girl comes out, I'm going to ask her for a drink of water, and if she says, I'll draw water for you and for all your camels, then that'll be the girl, right? And I'll know my prayers are answered. Before he gets done with the prayer, here comes Rebecca out, and she's got a bucket, and she's going to draw water out of the well. Now, getting one drink from, he asked her, she said, I'll draw, and she responded exactly, I will draw water for you and for all your camels. So she does. And I don't know how long it will take. If you got 10 camels and you put like a bucket down the well, put it in the trough, and it says that she ran to him, so she might have to run a distance from the well to where the camels are, and dump the water in the trough, and the bucket will go like that and be gone. So how many buckets can a camel drink? The kids were back there telling me 5 buckets, 10 buckets, 20 buckets. They were all like, that's what the hump's for. It fills full of water. You know, it's like it goes over like this, like Free Willy, like the fin goes down so the kids know all this stuff. Okay, so how many buckets of water did she have to get? 10, 20, 50, 100, who knows? But she did. She did exactly what she was asked to do. She went way beyond by getting him a drink and then getting a drink for all the camels. She went way beyond what she was asked to do. In that story, now there's more to that story, but in that part of the story, she was tested. The servant was tested because he prayed and God answered his prayer exactly as he asked, right? He asked for a girl to come out. She's a beautiful girl, and that's not what he asked for. He asked for a girl for his master, the right girl, okay? So this servant has watched Isaac grow up and wants the right girl. You know, she's going to be running the house after Sarah's already gone anyway, really, when she's going to be the head of the house under Isaac when they get back home. So he wants somebody that's going to serve, but he wants a test to make sure he gets the right one, right? So this is a test for him on prayer, and it is a test for Rebecca on serving, okay? And so I asked the kids, this is why I related to the kids back here, you're tested often by your teachers, by your parents, by your coaches, by your preacher, your Wednesday night teacher, Sunday school teacher. You're tested often by people who just ask you to do something just to see if you'll do it, okay? And we went through this last week, talking about testing. Do you ever ask your kids to do something just to see if they'll do it? Marie's saying yes, right? Anybody else? Anybody else just ask them to do something just to see if they will, right? Just to see if they will obey you, okay? I told the kids, I did this back there, and I've done this several times over the years. I'll take money out. Those who can't see that far, it's a $20 bill, and I sat on the table back there just to see if any kids will pick it up, if they'll walk away with it, right? Just to see, for me, it's just a test, just to see. Or if that wasn't enough, I did this back there, a bunch of bills out, set them on the table, the kids' eyes light up, you know. Some of them think McDonald's after church, whatever. And so I sat on the table just to see, and I've done that through the years, just to see if anybody will say anything, or if anybody will pick it up. Okay, and I gave the illustration of an old man that in front of me in Kmart one time years ago that dropped a big wad of $100 bills right in front of me. I didn't see it hit the ground, but I knew I'd seen him pull money out of his pocket and pay the lady with $100 bills and whatever he was getting. And then after he walked away, and I wanted to pay for my stuff at the next in line at Kmart, I looked down by my feet, and there was a wad of $100 bills like that, and I would say several $1,000s in that wad. What'd you do, Brother John? I stuck in my pocket like any good citizen. God has blessed me. Look at this money He's given me. And no, I didn't do that. I picked it up and I held up to the cashier at Kmart and I said, "That old man just dropped this." She said, "I know who he is." I ran out to him. Okay, so she ran out, came back. She had the wad in front of her pocket when she came back. But she ran out. She said, "I found him. I know who he is." And she took it. Okay. Well, John, where was that? I think for me that was a test, right? Would I keep that money? You ever test like that? How many of you found a $100 bill on the park? If you found it right here now, what would you do with it? Would you say, "Oh, God's blessed me, look here"? Okay. I found 12 cents in the parking lot the other day. Huh? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, take the $100 on time on it, God. It's okay. If you knew somebody else lost the money, would you give it back? Sure. Depends on who it was. Jonathan says, depends on who it was. Okay. That's all much. Okay. I think God tests us all the time. Okay. Anybody got comments, questions on that? Anybody think you're being tested when you've done something? I think I'm tested all the time. Okay. Now I told kids this. I used to hate school when I was a kid. I just wanted to be outside, sit there looking out the windows. I hated school. But when I started college, I loved tests because I prepared for those tests. I learned how to study. I did not learn how to study until I got to college. And once I got to college, and my grades were like C level when I started, but A's by the time I finished. It took me 5 years to get the 4-year degree, but it took me a while to get through because of work and everything. But it was eventually I learned how to learn how to study. Okay. All right. Any questions? Okay, 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Now that was the kids' lesson, as I told the kids back there. Now we're going to our lesson. No questions on the kids' lesson. We'll get right into this one. Okay. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. This is the first 2 verses. Paul asks his people to pray about something, and then the third verse he kind of replies the same thing. Okay. We got it. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 1. Finally, brethren, pray for us, that the word of the Lord may have free course and be glorified, even as it is with you, and that we may be delivered from unreasonable and wicked men, for all men have not faith. Stop reading right there. These 2 things that Paul prayed for, okay? The Lord will work through us, basically. God will be glorified. And number 2, that we be delivered from unreasonable and wicked men, because there's a lot of people around the world, in this world, they're just wicked as could be, okay? That we can get, that God will give us liberty from those type of people. Verse 3 is that answer, I think, Paul praying the same thing for those people. But the Lord is faithful, who will establish you and keep you from evil. Okay? Establish you means you got your direction you're supposed to go and follow God and keep you from evil people as well. Okay? So Paul's asking these people to pray for him for these 2 things, and he said God's already given you these same 2 things. Okay? This may be meddling, but I'm going to drop down the chapters, just a couple of verses, okay? Because when you read the rest of this chapter, you find out who men that aren't faith have. Excuse me, wicked men, for all men have not faith. Or verse 3, last part of verse 3 says evil men. What kind of people are evil? Okay? Now we're going to get let's read this. Look at verse 6. But we commend you, brethren, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. This whole book, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, he's bragging on these Christians for who they are. Now we command you, brethren, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, that you withdraw yourselves from every brother that walketh disorderly, and not after the tradition which he received of us. What's disorderly? What's disorderly? Okay, we'll read the next couple verses, we'll find out. For yourselves know how you ought to follow us, for we behave not ourselves disorderly among you. How did Paul behave himself? It was going to tell us. Neither do we eat any man's bread for naught, but wrought with labor and travail night and day, that we might not be chargeable to any of you. Not because we have not power, but to make ourselves an example unto you to follow. For even when we're with you, this commands you that if any would not work, neither should he. Stop reading right there and look at this place. Okay? When Paul went as a preacher, when he went from downtown as an evangelist, preacher, or missionary, whatever title you want to give him, starting churches, he would preach the gospel, but he would work the whole time. He was a tent maker, okay? And he would make tents. He would labor with his own hands. And he would not charge the church for what he did. He made his own living, and he also worked. If the guys that were with him couldn't make enough money, that the preachers that were traveling with him, if they couldn't make enough money to provide for everybody in their group, he would make sure that he worked hard enough that everybody in their group was taken care of. Why? He didn't want to be chargeable to the churches. When we were having our business meeting back here about a month ago, Virgil said, they were going over the numbers and stuff. Virgil jokingly said, well, clearly Brother John's not in this for the money, right? Because I'm not in this for the money, okay? Because even as early as the first churches, there were people coming in that didn't want to work. They wanted everyone to pay for their stuff, okay? Hey, preachers, okay? Brother John, does that mean no preachers should be full-time at the church? No, I think there's a lot of preachers should be full-time at their churches. There's Pastor Bartlett over here. The church is big enough to support him. He just shouldn't have to go out and work a job somewhere. Matter of fact, I think they put like 2 or 3 different people, full-time staff, plus the daycare and all the stuff the church pays for, which is good. But there's a lot of people that don't want to work, and he works hard for what he has. I know Kevin Bartlett, I've known him for 30 some years, that he's worked hard there at that church. His dad worked hard at that church, and his son works hard. It's not pleasant where he works. Okay, they're hard-working people, but there's a mistrust for Christianity because most preachers wouldn't lift a finger to work on anything. Does that make sense? Anybody know a preacher wouldn't work? I mean, not the ones that you know were here. Preacher David and I have worked all the time. But have you known somebody that hadn't worked or wouldn't work? I'm not saying that the church shouldn't pay them, just that they wouldn't work at all for any reason. Okay? I'll use this illustration. There was some came through here one time, and they were a missionary on deputation, and so they weren't planning on working, but they wouldn't serve whether they were at our church or any church that they were in the community or in the state, or probably anywhere in the United States while they were raising money. They wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't go out. For preachers, a lot of times work is going out and visit people or witness to people or go to the hospital, make a visitation, or whatever it is. They wouldn't do anything. They like to go around and sit and talk to people, other preachers. Okay? This guy went to a friend of mine at his church, and the guy said, the pastor come in, the other day, they got a full-time in the church. They got this preacher come in, and the pastor said, how can I help you? He said, I just want to chit-chat. He said, I don't have time to chit-chat. What do you want? He said, what the visiting preacher was saying is, I have nothing to do, and I'm not going to work. Okay? When he was asked to, or presented with work, he didn't want to. Okay? So he was, I'm in this, so I get paid. Okay? And I've met several of these preachers in my ministry through the years. Not Preacher Dave, not me, not anyone no local pastors, anybody like that. Okay? Brother John, how long has this been going on? Since the first century. Okay, let's read a couple verses. Okay, verse 11 says this: For we hear that there are some which walk among you disorderly, working not at all, but are busybodies. Okay, how do you get this out of the preachers? Now then, there are such we command and exhort by the Lord Jesus Christ that with quietness they work and eat their own bread. But ye, brethren, be not weary in well doing. If any man obey not our word in this epistle, note that man, have no company with him, that he may be ashamed. Yet count him not as an enemy, but admonish him as a brother. Okay? Okay. Charles Spurgeon, 150 years ago, 140 years ago, he had the largest church in England, Metropolitan Tabernacle. There was thousands of people, 30,000 people come hear him preach without a microphone. He just had a booming voice, and the building was built in a way that could hear thousands of people could hear him speak. Okay, he started Bible college because he wanted to train preachers, a preacher school. And he said too many guys came into his school wanting to be preachers, and he said he used a paraphrase of one of Jesus' teachings. He said they're too lazy to work and too proud to beg, so they want to become preachers. Okay, and don't you rail on these people? They kind of Spurgeon did. There's a lot of laziness in ministry. A lot of people think, I can do this. Matter of fact, we had a friend one time said his ministry became very lucrative. He said, wouldn't have to. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do it that way. He said, I got to be real careful with the money that came into that ministry that he had. And he said, because I don't want to be lazy. And so Spurgeon said it, and I've seen it several times, without naming names, I don't want to do it. But they're busybodies, okay? Someone that doesn't work has time to go around. You got preachers around here like this? No. But just the idea that it happens, and it has been happening for 2,000 years. When Eli was the priest, first Samuel chapter 1, Eli was the priest, and his sons were priests. Now they were priests because he was a priest. They were priests because of the tribe that they were belonged to. Okay, they were sons of Aaron. Remember Aaron and Moses. Moses, his brother was named Aaron, and Aaron was the head of the high priest, and his son, grandson, great grandson, and they all became priests. Well, if they didn't work and they didn't serve in any capacity, then like Eli's sons became vile. According to First Samuel, according to God, they became vile because they had too much time on their hands. So that work just became an occupation where they could make money. They didn't work. Okay, they didn't serve in capacity. So why are you saying this, Brother John? Just so we know, how you treat those people, like busybodies. Don't tell them anything. Okay, but then treat them as a brother. Admonish them as a brother, not an enemy. Okay, we're a pastor school in Indiana. Tammy and I went to school there. We went to a youth conference there years ago. And Brother Howes, I got to preach to all the preachers. There's like 7,000 preachers in the auditorium from all across the country and several foreign countries. And all these preachers would come in and hear him, just to hear him speak for a week. I mean, he preached 4 times a day for a week, and everyone loved to hear it. Okay, but he railed on this, and I'd seen it, but I didn't know that it was so common. That a lot of preachers work really hard to start, but then they slack off. A lot of Christians do the same thing. They're really hard when they first get saved. Then they slack off in their service for God. They serve for a little while, and then they say, that's enough. Okay? Brother House preached. He said he talked to preachers now. He talked about most of these preachers. We're talking about guys in their 30s and 40s who are just so involved in the ministry to weigh 300 pounds. I'll put it that way, because it was all about the casserole stuff. And he said, if your kids get up before you do and go to school before you start working, something's wrong. Really? He said, no, he talked about shift work and people working different jobs. He's talking about preachers now that have nothing else to do. And he said, if your kids get to school at 8 o'clock and you haven't started your day before then,
Well, I was glad when he was saying that. I was thinking about guys that I knew, and I was just sitting there in the pew, and I was thinking, man, my days always start at 5 o'clock. You know, at that time, 5 o'clock every morning. And he said, if your kids start their day at 8 o'clock at school, and you're way behind them, your ministry suffers because of it. And so I knew a preacher that the very next week school started, he was at the office before 8 o'clock on Monday morning. On Tuesday, he was at the office before 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning. On Wednesday, he'd lasted for about 4 days. Then he slacked off again. You know, he'd start working around noon and work a couple hours and call it a day. Okay, and I knew him well. Why is it so important, Brother John? Because there ought to be something inside of us that motivates us when nobody's watching. There ought to be something inside of us that says it's not about any kind of money that someone can give me, or any kind of pat on the back for any kind of ministry that we serve in, okay? Or any kind of Christian service that we do. There ought to be something inside of us that says it's all about him getting glory, not me getting paid. It's all about him getting glory, not me getting a pat on the back. There ought to be something inside of us that is always that way. Well, how do we get there, Brother John? The easiest way is look at the mistakes other people make and say, I don't want to be like that guy. Or that lady. That makes sense? Y'all with me on this? Did I lose anybody in the curve? Okay? Because there's something, okay. Miss Joe's nephew passed away this week. Last Thursday. The funeral was Monday. And her sister-in-law has told me a couple times in the last couple of years that she loved my dad because he was always working. They live up the holler. Dad lived out the holler, and she said that man was always working. And they didn't know much else about him. You know, we're actually some of us are family, but they could see that they just loved to see him out there working to the point where because his motor didn't quit for a long time, right? I mean, even when he was crippled, he was walking with a walker. He was dragging a lawn chair behind him and a post hole digger. And he'd walk out and set a lawn chair down, sit in the lawn chair, and dig a hole to set a post. Okay? Why? Because his motor had to keep going. There ought to be something inside of us that our motor keeps us going all the time. That makes sense. Eventually we wear down or wear out or whatever, but I would much rather wear out than rust out. Does that make sense? Some people, by the time they're, Tyler, how old are you? 46? 47. 47. Some people, by the time they're 47, they're rusted out. Don't rust out. Okay? I'd much rather burn out or wear out than rust out. When Bruce passed away a year and a half ago, there was this plaque that there was up front. There was a plaque around like a throw or something like that. There's a big saying, and some people want to. He said it is a saying that he had. A lot of people want to get into heaven with a perfectly preserved body and everything's gone perfect in their life. And he said he'd rather slide in sideways after a rough life of going as hard as he can get all his life, right? And he did until cancer took him. He was going as hard as he could all his life. Man, I'd much rather do everything I can. I thought, as a preacher in the ministry, as a Christian in my home, whatever it is, I would much rather keep going as long as I can, as much as I can, till I can't. A lot of people are content with, you don't have to, right? What's the worst thing that could happen to you, Charlie? What's the worst thing that can happen to you? Win the lottery, right? And you stay home. Your brother-in-law tries to kill you. That usually happens when that happens. You know, it's, unless you're anonymous, but they eventually all leaks out. Okay. The worst thing that happens to people is they have nothing to do, right? And a lot of people say, this is the easy way. It is no easy way. Okay, question? Okay, Jonathan has a question. Can you name the lazy preacher you were talking about? No. No, I will not. But for $1 after church, I'll tell you probably he was. Okay, no comments, no questions. Okay, At what time do we quit serving in church? There's been people that left here that Damon and I have run into them somewhere at school or whatever. We thought, well, you know, and we know that going to church. My question is not where you're going, where you serving. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're more of a servant. Well, you serve, but now you're not serving. What are you serving? Are you still serving God? Well, okay. Everyone's got an opportunity to serve, right? Even up until, okay, when you get to the point, okay, we can't drive anymore. Marie, you hadn't driven for a year, right? Okay, but you can't drive, you can't go pick up somebody, you can't do something that you used to be able to do. We get to a point where we can't do some things, but we can always serve and find whatever capacity is we can serve. It may be prayer, it may be giving, it may be doing for somebody else. It may be Marie makes this is a hint. It may be Marie makes a apple pie and sends it with David. But everyone knows, has seen David walk with an apple pie in one of his carriers. He marches like he's still in the army, and it's all slides one end and back to the other. Right, Marie? We've opened them back there, and they're like that. It's all at one end or at the other. Okay. Okay. Find what it is that keeps your motor running personally, to keep feeding that inside of you. Say, what am I supposed to do? And it may be getting up every morning saying, this is what I do. Not every morning I get up and say, Lord, lead me to help those whom Jesus would help to do in my shoes this morning. So when I'm working on my job, on my sales job, I'll have people walk by a lady, I said, what's wrong? There's something, she's different. And that's the prayer request I had about the 15-year-old daughter. She said, we've got to do this. Because my daughter, because our family, we don't know what to do. Okay? There's something inside of me that's always looking for it. Some kind of an opportunity to witness, some opportunity to serve. Okay? Questions? Comments? Are we done? Yeah, no question, Brother John. Can we go get something to eat now? Are we done? All right, that's dismissed. Thank you, Lord, for loving us. Thank you for truth, forgiveness, and your word. I pray that you'll help us not be lazy in any way, to look for our opportunity to serve as Christians. To work as hard as we can, to bring honor and glory to you with all we do. Thank you, Jesus, for loving us and for dying on the cross for us, and the opportunity you've given us to serve you here. Thank you for our church family and the blessings you've given us, 30 years that you've given us. I pray you'll use us all for your glory. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen. Thanks for coming out.